So this is the Daryl Sheets 5.5 inch hand pump filter press. There's a series of plates that go on here, each separated with a 5.25 inch filter. Each plate goes on in a specific order. They do certain tasks. Just make sure that the holes are lined up in your press. I use my finger as a guide. And then the front plate, or the back plate, I'm not sure what this one's called, the front or the back. Probably the front, I guess. Goes on, 2 washers go on, and then you tighten it down. Just get it snug, start up the other side, and then tighten them down at the same time. And you're ready to start. So you want to get your syrup, this is a little hot, but you want to get it 205, 210, so it's registering 216 right now. Add your diatomaceous earth filtering aid. It's usually, this is, I'm assuming, about a 3 or 4 gallon batch, so I'm putting in a cup per gallon, and just whisk that in. Just make sure that it, and this is off heat, but it's acting like it's on heat, but it's not. And just whisk it all in so there's no clumps. I'm at the press. We're going to start pumping through, so I'm using PEX, which is making this harder than it's got to be. And we're going to recirculate back into the pot until the syrup runs clear, which with PEX is challenging. I've got the PEX clamped on. We're at the bottom of the tube. I'm just going to start pumping now until the syrup comes through, which you can start seeing it go up the tube now. And you're going to start seeing it recirculate. Through this blue tube. I can feel it coming through. So now it's just going through the filter press papers now, and eventually we'll see it come out. It's getting harder to press, which I know that means that the diatomaceous earth is building up its cake inside the press. And now I'm just recirculating the syrup back through until it looks clear to me by eye, which it's already starting to. So I'm just going to do 2 more pumps, and I'm going to start collecting the filtered syrup in its own jug. Do that now. I'm just going to continue to pump this through. I'm going to use 2 hands a little bit because I want nice, clean, I don't know what this is called, but I want nice, clean flows. And I have to be careful because I'm kind of a one-man show, and that pot could get thrown off because of the tightness of the PEX. So the hand pump is fairly tough to use today, and I think I may have used a little bit too much filtering aid, but it's not a race of any kind. Slow and steady will get this done. This is a plastic pump, so you kind of want to be careful with it anyway. But the syrup coming out should be crystal clear. So we changed angles a little bit so you could see the clean syrup coming out. And I'm using one hand on the pump and one hand on the jug, and the PEX is extremely hot. So this is the filtered product. We're trying to find the best light, but it's very clear. So one of the pitfalls that we have when we're doing this is the flat pot won't allow all the syrup to come up through the tube, so we elevated it. So that'll tilt the pot and allow us to continue to press. So the stock pot's empty, and now it's basically just sucking air.
I'm gonna need more lids because I don't have enough lids for these pints.
I still try to squeeze out as much as I can. We'll start cleaning it next. Okay, so for the most part, the madness is done. It's pretty intense, but now we're cleaning up. So in the press, there's probably still, I don't know, at least a pint, maybe 2 pints of syrup that we don't want to waste. So I've taken the input hose and dropped it into some hot water, and I'm just going to start pumping that through, and it's going to go through and rinse the press, and the discharge will come out here. So the light isn't all that good, but there's just a ton of syrup coming out, and eventually the water is going to mix with it, and we're going to add this right back into our next batch. As you can see, the water is pretty clear coming out. Just pump once more. So it's taken from the clean, pumping it through the press, and discharging into the waste, which we're going to reboil. We need to ensure that the press is as empty as possible now before we start taking this thing apart. So I just continue to pump this there's nothing being put in. I'm just pumping out what's ever in there, and I'm going to make sure that I pump this out until I don't hear anything. It's important to get it empty. Okay, so that sounds pretty empty. This drip pan is very useful, and we're not going to waste any of this. So I'm just going to dump this back into the waste bucket. Okay, now we can take apart the press. There may be some residual syrup left in there that may come out in the drip pan, but nothing. It's very important to make sure that you empty it prior to taking this thing apart. I say it's definitely a two-handed job. Maybe you can see the cake. This is the pressed filtering aid diatomatricide. So here's some of the cake, you can see it. So to really make sure that the hot line is clean, I just fill up a 32 ounce jar and push it through, really making sure that that the inside of that press is clean. All right, so as I was cleaning up, I was thinking of some things that I should probably make you aware about. This was my 4th time using it. I've learned something every time, and this was the first time that I haven't learned anything yet, so it's pretty intuitive along the way. And anything I may have said that makes me seem critical of the press shouldn't be misinterpreted to be that. I have really nothing negative to say. It's worked beyond what my expectations were. There's some things that I want to do. I want to put quick disconnects here to make getting the hoses on and off a lot easier. These are standard 5 1/4 inch filters. CDL carries them. This plate doesn't come off, and this is how it starts when you're building it again. So it starts with a plate, and then we go a hollow. And one thing I will say that's important is there's nubs on here. Everyone has one. And that's what has to be lined up when you're putting this back together again. So again, I'm using my finger as the guide. We put on a hollow plate, press, line up this nub, line up the paper, put another one on, and the process just continues until you get to the end. Line up this nub, so everything goes on one side. That was a mistake that I made my first time, and that was easily fixed. As I put this back together for the next use, Daryl recommends a batch size of 2 to 3 gallons for using this press, and you don't have to use all these plates each time. So for a 3-gallon batch, you could use 3 or 4. These side bolts are adjustable, and you could take some of these plates out. So we'll just tighten this down, and we are ready for the next use.